Well, greetings. It is March 23rd, 2017, and I want to welcome you to Lunch with Crossroads. I am Pastor Rob Summerall, and I am broadcasting live here from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. You are watching Lunch with Crossroads, a weekly chat about current events from a Christian worldview. Of course, we are broadcasting live here from the mothership in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, where it is a crisp and beautiful 39 degrees outside. And as always, if you have any topic suggestions, just send us an email to lunch@crossroadsetown. You also can find us on the internet at crossroadsetown.com. And hey, why don't you go ahead and follow us on Twitter too, at Rob_Summerall or at crossroadsetown. Thanks for tuning in. I can't believe you guys are tuning in and watching. Welcome to some folks out there I see watching. Congrats. Sherry Spencer, Amanda Turner, thank you for tuning in. We are excited to have you guys out there, you ladies tuning in. Sherry was my co-host last week. She did a fantastic job at that. Hey, welcome. Go ahead and let us know what you're having for lunch today. If you're having something yummy, we always like to enjoy what you're having for lunch, and so you can let us know that right now. I think that I see some Woohoos in my future because it's Free Sweet Tea Thursday at Woohoos. That is not a commercial. I did not get endorsed for that, though I do have a free. I do have my punch card is full, and so that means I get a free hero. Happy birthday today to my friend Miss Betty Smith. Her son Ryan was the best man at my wedding, and so it's her birthday today. Happy birthday to her. Earlier this week, happy birthday to Isabella Moore. Isabella is having her quinceañera tomorrow, or tomorrow's Friday, on Saturday, and so I'm excited to be a part of that before. I've never preached a sermon at the quinceañera, and I'm very excited about that, Isabella, so thank you for including me in that. Happy birthday earlier this week to Pastor Josh Luton over at Tunnel Hill Baptist Church. And then, of course, to one of my favorite elders here at Crossroads, Doug Grinnell. This weekend, I want to wish a early happy birthday to Miss Sarah Dawson. Ralph Perkins, hope you and April and Kellen are doing well in the D.C. area. Miss Tori Smith, she's turning 18. And Lindsay Bridges and her sweet family. Happy birthday to you, Lindsay. Well, hope you guys are doing well. So chime in. What are you guys having for lunch today? Welcome in Miss Stephanie Nall and others who are tuned in there live to watch us as we are being broadcast. Facebook is telling me that we should be congratulated today because it's our 50th broadcast. Well, not exactly. Today is episode 48 of Lunch with Crossroads. We are going to have a big 50th anniversary, a 50th episode celebration in a few weeks, but that's not happening yet. And so we'll tell you more about that next week. And that's actually going to happen in 3 weeks because I'm going to be on vacation in 2 weeks. And I could have got a co-host, but I didn't want to guest co-host for the 50th because I want to be here for that. And so we're going to have a party. So we're excited about that. Miss Sarah Staubs is out there. She's having Subway today for lunch. That's a good choice. Subway, eat fresh. We always like that. Well, listen, while you're chiming in, let me go ahead and let you know about some things from the news, okay? Hi, Miss Beth Meredith. Glad to see you there. Stephanie Nall says her husband is bringing her soup and salad from Chick-fil-A. Hey, Stephanie, I am so sorry that you did not go to Feast Barbecue yesterday. I know you were in Louisville. Put it on the bucket list because there is a feast downtown now. You don't have to go across the river. There's a feast downtown. It's on the main street right there that runs in front of the Yum Center, but it's over by the hospitals. So it's on that side. And when you go, make sure you get the pork cakes. It sounds disgusting. It's like a crab cake with pork, but you will thank me later, okay? Heather Sally says she's having salad and soup as well. Lots of folks tuning in here today, and it looks like lots of ladies tuning in today, which is great because I'll give you a little sneak peek. Today we're in praise of biblical womanhood. We'll be talking about that here in a second. But first, let's tackle our news for today. I'm lifting my boycott on political news because I wanted to talk about this headline. Gorsuch is the intellectual the court needs. Dateline, Washington, D.C., and my eyes have been glued to C-SPAN this week because I'm one of those political junkies that I really I'm really very interested in the appointment of the next Supreme Court justice. And Neil Gorsuch is a guy that I was unaware of prior to all of these hearings, of course, his nomination, and then the subsequent hearings. Of course, he is being nominated to fill the seat that was vacated when Antonin Scalia, the Lion of the Court, which was kind of his nickname, when he passed away. He is the founder and the biggest exponent, or proponent rather, of what's called historicism. So in other words, he argues, and I believe correctly, that we should try to interpret the Constitution the way that the framers of the Constitution intended for it to be interpreted, rather than seeing it primarily as a living, breathing document, which means that every subsequent generation gets to interpret it however they deem fit to interpret it. Okay, and so in other words, did the authors have an intent, and should we seek to discover that? And I think that we do well to read it that way. Well, I found an interesting article about I guess he's proposed Supreme Court nominee, that's what he would be. Neil Gorsuch appeared in the USA Today, and Jonathan Turley is writing there, and I quote at length from him because I thought it was a very interesting quote. He said, "Gorsuch is the gold standard for a nominee. He is widely respected for his writings on legal theory and history, which include refreshingly provocative ideas on the structure of government, morality and the law, and interpretive theory. This is, in other words, a full portfolio of work at the very highest level of analysis." To which I completely agree. This is a guy who actually has made rulings, and in the past, it seems since Robert Bork got borked back in the Reagan era, he did not get approved, and then that's where we got the term somebody got borked. That means they got nominated, but they did not get approved. Since that time, when that happened to Robert Bork, we've been nominating Supreme Court justices or nominees who didn't have much of a track record. And this guy has a track record, and I really like that about him. And evidently, he's just really, really smart. Turley goes on and he says, "Quite frankly, few nominees have been particularly distinguished on the basis of their intelligence. The low moment came when President Nixon's nomination of Judge G. Harold Carswell was criticized as the quote dull graduate of the third best law school in the state of Georgia, and he lacked any scholarly articles or significant decisions. One senator came to his defense and famously rose in his defense, and he declared, 'Even if he were mediocre, there are a lot of mediocre judges and people and lawyers. They're entitled to a little representation too, aren't they?'" And so, interesting. That's very interesting. Hey, greetings to the Salees on their way home from Louisville. Hope you guys have a good, clean signal, but hope you don't wreck. So be careful. Be careful. Oh, listen, here's where I go with that. The reason I wanted to mention Gorsuch is I truly am thankful to be a part of a country where we get to participate in that. Don't always agree. I think sometimes the Supreme Court oversteps its boundaries, and I don't want them to do that, whether it's a conservative or a liberal Supreme Court. But the conversation about this is important to me because it points us from a Christological standpoint to think about the fact that we are promised a day when justice will be right. We look forward to a time when Christ comes, and he will come as a righteous judge. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. All right. So news article number 2 today. Okay. Dateline, San Diego, California. Here's the headline. You're going to like this. This is going to be interesting. I want to hear what you guys think. Family of teen who was made to drink meth said Family of teen who was made to drink meth he said was juice gets $1 million. All right. So just to clarify, this is not something that happened like in recent times because all these border wars with President Trump are going on. This actually happened on November 18th, 2013. So that was under the previous administration's leadership. But here's what happened. A young man who is a resident of Tijuana but he goes to school in the San Diego area, came across the pedestrian crossing at the border, okay? And so the United States Border Control, they looked in his backpack, they saw 2 jars. He said in the jars there was juice. And basically, the Border Patrol people said, okay, great, we don't believe you. Prove it by taking a sip. Well, it was liquid methamphetamine. And the kid took, according to his lawyer, this is according to his lawyer, he took 4 sips of liquid methamphetamine, immediately was stricken with incredible pain, and he died within 2 hours. Okay? So he has recently received a judgment. His family received a judgment of $1 million in a wrongful death suit that was brought against the United States. And here's a quote from his lawyer. Okay, he told this to the Washington Post. He said, "To cause him to die in a horrible way that he did is something that is execrable." I don't even know what that word means. Anyway, I didn't want to get lost on that word. I should have read the sentence better before we came online. But this is complicated. First of all, let's just admit it's tragic. A young man died. He was 16 years old. He died. They've established the fact that he was paid a small amount of money to what they call mule drugs across the. Thank you, Amy Powers. She said that means poopy. Okay. Thank you, Amy, for helping me with that. So he died in a poopy way. But it's tragic. He lost his life. He was paid a small amount of money to mule drugs across the border. He knew they were drugs. They admit to that. He said it was juice. The Border Patrol said, okay, prove it. You say it's juice. If it's only juice, take a sip. But then his lawyer says that they caused him to die. I don't know. What do you guys think? It's obviously a difficult circumstance. Was this the Border Patrol's fault? Just so you know, the 2 Border Patrol officers who are named are still in the employment of the Border Patrol. So evidently their superiors didn't find that they did any wrongdoing that would merit their termination. But they did obviously lose their case. So I mean that is interesting to me. It's just a fascinating court case. What do you think? You know, I mean, do you have an opinion? Obviously not. You're not typing anything. He said, "Oh yeah." So Amy Powers said he could have just said, "Okay, I lied. It's not juice." Which is my point. They didn't make him drink it. He chose to drink it when they said it's juice. Okay? Obviously, it was a horrible choice. The young man lost his life, and I don't want to diminish that or make light of that at all. But, I mean, come on. You know, if somebody says, hey, if you do that, it'll kill you, and you're like, no, it's not, it won't kill me, and then you do it, I don't know. Crazy. Anyway, let me get off that. Anyway, I did not know this until recently. Just this week I learned, I've been missing out on this all of my life, that March is National Women's History Month. I did not know that. So all of you ladies out there, which like 95% of my viewership right now is feminine, you should give me hearts for that because I like your little clicks. Okay, and I wanted us today to have a conversation about the wonderful gift of femininity. Femininity. I'm having a hard time talking today. But admittedly, this is a confusing and a difficult conversation to have. It's confused by several societal and cultural issues that we have to recognize from the outset. First of all, it's confused by the women's lib movement, which has seemed to kind of lose steam, but was big in the 70s and the 80s and maybe even a little before that. Because rather than celebrate femininity, the women's lib movement sought to obliterate really all gender distinctions. And let's be honest, there were some unhealthy gender distinctions that needed to be obliterated, but they didn't seek to just to do away with the unhealthy ones, they kind of sought to do away with all gender distinctions. And so having a conversation about biblical femininity is confused by that cultural implication. It's also confused because of the way that that women are abused today. To talk about biblical femininity is difficult because, let's be honest, we live in a day and age where we could argue, despite all of the things that have happened with the women's live movement, that women are more abused in today's worldwide society than ever before. And you say, well, why in the world would you say that? Well, we know this, that the porn industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And we also know that most porn sites are driven by what we can only describe as sex trafficking. And it's just a horrible, horrible thing that is happening many times in developing world countries. And we've got to recognize that there are real issues there. It's also a confusing conversation to have because, let's be honest, even in church world, there are some very chauvinistic stereotypes that have long held sway over our society. You know, you hear things like women are the weaker sex. Well, weaker in what way? I mean, you guys know what the man flu is, right? The man flu is when I have the sniffles. I mean, women are weaker. When a mom gets sick, she doesn't have time to slow down. I mean, she just keeps trucking. I mean, a dude gets sick and he's going to take off work for 5 days, you know. And so, I mean, weaker in what way? I think that's a worthy conversation to have. Sometimes people will say dumb things like women are incompetent. Okay. Incompetent at what, right? Because, I mean, have you met my wife, right? She's uber competent. Women are not as logical or as intelligent. Well, first of all, I know some dudes that are not very logical, and then I know some women that are really logical. I mean, can that be that maybe that's not a gender thing, but that's just a temperament and a people thing that goes above and beyond gender? So it's confusing because of those chauvinistic stereotypes. And it's also confusing because gender distinctives are under assault today, right? And there's Lewis O'Brien. Lewis O'Brien told me he wasn't going to be in today, but there he is. You know, I read in the paper just today, it was in USA Today, that Secret Antiperspirant is launching a brand new ad campaign which depicts women in really stressful situations and how they act, and obviously how their antiperspirant acts. So, for example, this is what it depicts. It depicts a woman who is building up the courage to give a business pitch in a boardroom. A woman who's building up the courage to request a raise, a woman who's building up the courage to ask for a man's hand in marriage. And here's where it gets kind of crazy, a transgender woman who is building up the courage to walk out of a bathroom stall and interact with the cisgender women that are already there. Okay, and this is a part of the brand new Procter & Gamble Secret, Strong Enough for a Man, but made for a transgender man or transgender woman, right? And so, I mean, that should be their new slogan, right? But their gender distinctions are very confused. And I just want to say hi, Laura Beth. Laura Beth is there. My daughter's here today. So any topic we talk about on Lunch with Crossroads, I really want it to come back to the same thing. And that's the conversation of how should we think of this issue in light of God's word, okay? And so a discussion on femininity is no different to me. It's a discussion we need to have in light of God's word. And the first thing I would say is that gender distinctives were God's idea. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, God made man in his own image, and in the image of God he created him, male and female, he created them. And guess what he did after that? He said, it's very good. And so when God looked at the distinctives between man and woman, he says it's very good. And so we have to recognize that masculinity is very good and femininity is very good. These were not our ideas. Our culture has done some things to them, but from its onset, in its purest form, gender distinctives were God's idea. And he did that, and he did it well, and we should celebrate that. And that means that, yes, we should live our lives in praise of biblical womanhood, in praise of femininity. And then secondly, I would say that not only were gender distinctives God's idea, but where sin has distorted those, where we've had chauvinism, male chauvinism, that chauvinistic stereotypes were often crushed by the ministry of Jesus Christ. This coming Sunday, I'm going to be preaching from John chapter 4. I've been studying it all week long. It's where Jesus greets that woman at the well in Samaria. And, he crosses a lot of cultural boundaries there, and he talks to a Samaritan, but even more importantly, he talks to a woman, which a man would have never talked to a woman, certainly not a Judean man wouldn't have talked to a Samaritan woman. And so he's crossing that boundary, and he's saying, look, all of the chauvinistic ideas you have about how women are unworthy, I want to engage here, and I want to destroy that chauvinism. Paul later on did the same thing. People all the time are saying, well, Paul was a chauvinistic pig because of some of the things he says in 1 Corinthians in celebration of gender distinctions, and some of the things he says in Timothy in celebration of gender distinctions. But then he comes back in Galatians chapter 3 and verse 28, and he said, there's neither Jew nor Greek, there's neither slave nor free, there's no male, no female, for we are all one in Jesus Christ. And what he's saying is, at the foot of the cross, the ground is level. God doesn't save us based upon our gender. He saves us based upon his grace. And so all of those chauvinistic ideas that have marked our world, they die. They die an ugly, horrible death at the hands of Jesus Christ and his ministry. And then the third thing I want to say is that the uniqueness of feminine nurture is really needed in the body of Christ today. And there is no doubt that God has made women, that he has made women unique, and especially unique in the way of nurturing, okay? Women tend to be much more nurturing than men. And that's not just a motherhood thing, because there are women who don't have children, some of whom I know that are amazing nurses, and they're very nurturing in what they do. And that's just a way that they go about that. And I listened to a message this morning in preparation for today. It was a message delivered back in 2008 in Chicago at the True Woman Conference. It was delivered by John Piper. And the title to his message was called The Ultimate Meaning of True Womanhood. I'm sure you can Google that and find that message. It's phenomenal. His big idea in that message was really great. His big idea was wimpy theology makes wimpy women. And he went on to talk about how he doesn't really care for wimpy women. He married a strong woman. He's raising, at that point in time, his daughter was about to turn 13. He wanted her to grow up and be a strong woman. My daughter's watching. I want her to grow up and in Christ to be a strong woman. I want her to have that strength of conviction. I want her to have that strength of hard work. I want her to have those moral characteristics that make her excel in a very difficult world. And John Piper gave some illustrations that I want to rip off from him and share with you guys today, because they so inspired me. He talked about weak women and how there wasn't really room in the body of Christ. We need strong women. And he gave example of Marie Durant. He said, the opposite of a wimpy woman is not brash, pushy, loud, controlling, sassy, uppity, arrogant Amazon. The opposite of a wimpy woman is the 14-year-old Marie Durant, a French Christian in the 17th century, who was arrested for being a Protestant and told she could be released if she said one phrase, I abjure. Instead, she wrote on the wall of her cell, resist. And she stayed there 38 years until she died, doing just that, resisting. That's a strong woman. He talks about Gladys and Esther Staines, who in 1999, after serving after serving with her husband Graham in India for 3 decades as missionaries, learned that her husband and her 2 sons, Philip aged 10 and Timothy aged 6, had been set on fire and burned alive by the very people that they had been serving for 34 years. She said this to the press. She said, "I have only one message for the people of India. I am not bitter, neither am I angry. Let us burn hatred and spread the flame of Christ's love." She's the opposite of a wimpy woman. Her 13-year-old daughter, whose name was Esther, which I think is awesome, what an appropriate name. She gave a quote to the press, and this is what she said about her father's murder. She said, quote, "I praise the Lord that he found my father worthy to die for him." I got to be honest, I'm deeply, deeply moved by that kind of sentiment. I'm deeply moved by that. Joni Eareckson Tada is another great example. I mean, for 41 years, that woman has been in a wheelchair. And she prays, and she gave this quote to Christianity Today. She said, "Oh, thank you, God, for this wheelchair. By tasting hell in this life, I've been driven to think seriously about what faces me in the next. This paralysis is my greatest enemy." I know that a lot of my audience is female. A lot of you guys that watch this in real time are female. And I just want to say to you, God has made you unique, and He's made you beautiful, and He's made you strong, and you are at your best when you are who God created you to be. And that is just a servant for Christ with your unique feminine attributes. God doesn't want you to be a strong man. He wants you to be a strong woman. And we are stronger when you are who God created you to be. John Piper said this in that message I listened to today. And I quote him. He said, "A woman on her knees sways this nation more than 1,000 three-piece suited Wall Street jerks." And the ladies clapped when he said that on that audio, the audio of that message. I thought, how appropriate for them to realize this. These men who have risen to the top of their profession, who are moving portfolios and business and all of these things, 3,000 of them. I mean, they're the height of what we think of as successful, and one woman on her knees is greater than all of that. Our world is deeply, deeply confused about what it means for us to be strong as man, strong as woman. And this month it is National Women's History Month. And my prayer is that we would have women who rise up in this generation, that one day people would look back and they would say, historically, you were part of what changed my world, whether you're a teacher or a mother or a school bus driver or a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is God has for you to be. We know that you can be so many different things for the glory of God, that you would be whatever God has called you to be for His name and for His glory. And we thank God for you. We thank God that He is using you to minister in His good name. So that's my message to you ladies today. I hope that it is encouraging and uplifting. Ray Parker had a great comment. He said, we're talking about Jesus exalting women. Who did Christ first reveal Himself to after His resurrection? He revealed Himself to women. There is no doubt that was God's plan. And also, I mean, let's just be honest. The women are the one that got up and went to go honor Jesus. Dudes were still in bed, right? So thank God for that. Well, listen, we always love hearing feedback from our viewers. And so if you want to send us some feedback, some questions, comments, maybe you disagree with me, we'd love to hear about it. Look, send us an email, lunch@crossroads.etown. That comes to me. Again, you can follow us on Twitter at Crossroads eTown or at Rob_Sumrall. Find us on the web at crossroadseTown.com, where you can find out more about our church. If you don't have a church home, we want to invite you to come worship with us on Sundays at 10:30. If you'll go to Crossroads eTown, you can sign up for our brand new weekend update, where you can get links to sermons and all kind of fun facts that are going on in the life of our church, especially if you're not connected to Crossroads and you just want to know what's going on at Crossroads. That's a great way. You'll get one email a week, and it'll tell you about things that are going on. Okay? Hey, join us this Sunday. We're going to be preaching from John chapter 4, the first part of that chapter. We're going to be talking about how Jesus crossed cultural barriers to minister to that woman at the well in Samaria. Hey, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope that you'll be here next week as we gather together once again to talk about things that are going on in our world from a Christian worldview. So anyway, God bless you guys. We love you. See you next week.